What if the most influential figures of the Spanish-American War were not the men immortalized in bronze and marble, forever charging up San Juan Hill, but women whose names seldom appear on plaques or monuments? And what if the war that announced the United States as an imperial power also marked a quieter, more intimate turning point, one in which women, through journalism, caregiving, labor, and organizing, began to reshape the boundaries of public life? In this video, you'll meet the first accredited female war correspondent in North America, a group of professional nurses who challenged military authority through sheer necessity, society women who turned parlors into command centers, and women of color whose labor and leadership rarely make it into the history books. We'll explore how their efforts intersected with imperial ambition, racial tension, and the evolving idea of what women could be in public life. You're watching Journeys Through History. In 1898, Tampa, Florida found itself at the center of a global moment. Almost overnight, this relatively small Gulf Coast city became the logistical heart for the American war against Spain. Nearly 30,000 soldiers arrived by train. Camps sprawled across scrubland and along waterways. Steamships crowded the port, waiting to carry men, supplies, and American ambition south toward Cuba. Among the dozens of journalists who arrived in Tampa in the spring of 1898 was Kathleen Blake Coleman, known to readers as Kit. Already an experienced reporter for the Toronto Mail and Empire, Coleman understood something essential. Wars are not only fought with weapons, but with words. During her era, yellow journalism rose to inflame readers with specious headlines. But Coleman spent her career trying to report what she saw, not inflame readers. When rumors of conflict intensified, Coleman did not wait for an assignment to fall into her lap. She went directly to Washington, D.C. and demanded accreditation as a war correspondent. Her request was met with laughter. Secretary of War Russell Alger reportedly dismissed the idea, suggesting that war zones were no place for women and citing the impropriety of bare-chested soldiers as justification. The exchange revealed more than condescension. It exposed an anxiety about women as witnesses. To allow women into war reporting was to risk a different kind of narrative, one that emphasized conditions, suffering, and ambiguity over heroism and spectacle. Coleman refused to accept exclusion. After persistent negotiation, she secured accreditation, becoming the first officially recognized female war correspondent in North America. Her victory, however, was only partial. Like many journalists, she found herself stranded in Tampa for weeks as military authorities repeatedly denied passage to Cuba. Her writing from Tampa reflects both frustration and insight. While male correspondents worried about missing the action, Coleman observed the city itself. She described the heat, the dust, the boredom of waiting troops, the makeshift nature of camps, and the sensory overload of a city temporarily transformed into the center of the world. She often dined alone. She remarked on the social isolation imposed on women journalists, whom she described as both hypervisible and deliberately ignored. Generals avoided her. Fellow correspondents jeered. Editors back home grew impatient. Yet it was precisely this marginal position that made her reporting distinctive. Coleman captured what traditional war correspondents overlooked: the emotional texture of wartime. Her Tampa was not a backdrop for glory, but a living environment filled with uncertainty, fatigue, and human improvisation. When she finally managed to reach Cuba by persisting after repeated denials, she carried this sensibility with her. Her work challenged the assumptions of underlying yellow journalism. Her writing insisted that war be understood not only as a series of victories and defeats, but as an accumulation of human experiences. Coleman's struggle for access in 1898 foreshadows a broader turn in journalism. By claiming the authority to narrate, she asserted a form of power rarely granted to women at the time. This was not simply professional ambition, it was cultural intervention. While correspondents documented the build-up to war, another crisis unfolded largely out of the public eye. The U.S. Army entered the Spanish-American War dangerously unprepared for disease. In Tampa's camps, typhoid, malaria, and yellow fever spread rapidly. Sanitation was poor. Medical staffing was inadequate. More soldiers would die from illness than from combat. Initially, the Army resisted employing female nurses. Military medicine remained firmly tied to male authority, even as its systems collapsed under the pressure of mass mobilization. But necessity forced change. In May 1898, the Army authorized the hiring of contract nurses, professional women employed to temporarily meet urgent needs. More than 1,500 women served as contract nurses during the war. They worked in hospitals, camps, and improvised facilities. They were paid professionals, yet remained outside the formal military hierarchy. Their ambiguous status unsettled many officials who worried about discipline, decorum, and control. Clara Barton arrived in Tampa in this context. Already legendary for her Civil War service and as founder of the American Red Cross, Barton was nearly 80 years old, but age did not slow her. She moved quickly to organize relief efforts, distribute supplies, and advocate for the sick. Barton's presence was both practical and symbolic. She embodied a different mode or a different model of authority, one rooted in experience and humanitarian principle rather than rank. Her Red Cross workers, many of them women, moved between camps and hospitals with a degree of autonomy that unsettled many military doctors. Tensions were common. Army physicians resented what they perceived as interference. Some worried that women nurses, by asserting professional judgment, undermined military command. Yet, where nurses worked, conditions improved. Soldiers recovered. Order emerged from chaos. The work was grueling. Nurses trudged through rain to reach isolated camps. They treated men suffering from severe illness with limited resources. They navigated social scrutiny. Their behavior was closely watched, particularly when housed in prominent hotels like the Tampa Bay Hotel. Their visibility, the women moving freely through masculine spaces, challenged Victorian norms. But wartime necessity provided cover. Care became a form of quiet resistance, compelling institutions to accept realities they would otherwise reject. Not all women in wartime Tampa labored in camps or hospitals. The city's social elite women, the wives and daughters of businessmen, politicians, and professionals, mobilized in their own way. Drawing on extensive social networks, they organized fundraisers, supply drives, and relief efforts that complemented Red Cross and military operations. Homes in Hyde Park, Tampa Heights, and South Tampa became sites of civic action. Teas and dinners served dual purposes: social performance and logistical coordination. These women leveraged respectability to move resources efficiently, negotiate access, and influence decision-making. Their efforts were often framed as extensions of domestic responsibility, a patriotic outgrowth of feminine virtue. Yet the scale and effectiveness of their organization tell a different story. They managed funds, oversaw distribution of supplies, and coordinated with national organizations. Such work blurred the boundary between private and public life. By stepping into leadership roles during wartime, society women demonstrated competence and authority in ways that would later be cited by suffrage advocates. If women could organize relief on a massive scale, why could they not vote? Why could they not hold office? In Tampa, as elsewhere, wartime service provided empirical evidence against claims of female incapacity. The social capital accumulated in 1898 would continue to shape local civic life in the decades that followed. While the social elite women gained visibility and moral authority, women of color labored largely beyond the public gaze. Their contributions, however, were no less vital. African American women supported segregated Buffalo Soldiers regiments stationed near Tampa. Through churches and community organizations, they provided food, medical care, and emotional support to soldiers whom the Army systematically neglected. This work occurred within a broader context of racial exclusion. Jim Crow laws restricted mobility, opportunity, and recognition. Yet, Black women built a parallel system of care and resilience. Their labor sustained men fighting for a nation that denied them full citizenship. One of the most remarkable figures of pre-war Tampa was Fortune Taylor, a formerly enslaved woman who became a significant landowner along the Hillsborough River. By 1898, her legacy was already visible in the city's geography. Her story challenges conventional narratives of the Gilded Age by foregrounding Black property ownership, autonomy, and permanence. In Ybor City, Cuban and Afro-Cuban women engaged in political labor that crossed national boundaries. Factory wages supported Cuban independence efforts. Community leaders such as Paulina Pedroso hosted revolutionary meetings and provided protection for figures like Jose Marti. These women's labor, whether in factories, churches, or homes, connected Tampa to global struggles for freedom. Their stories complicate any simple account of American imperialism by revealing overlapping histories of resistance and migration. The Spanish-American War ended quickly. By late summer 1898, Tampa's camps emptied. Soldiers shipped out. Journalists departed. The city settled into a new rhythm, yet the war's social impact endured. At Journeys Through History, exploring is not about checking boxes. It's about slowing down, asking better questions, and seeing what lies beneath familiar narratives. Tampa in 1898 invites us to do precisely that, to look beyond the obvious, to listen for quieter voices, to understand that modern America was built not only by those who seized territory, but by those who seized responsibility. Those who shaped wartime Tampa did not always leave monuments behind, but they left something more enduring, a blueprint for civic engagement grounded in care, courage, and persistence. The challenge for us today is whether we are willing to see them. Until next time, safe journey.